Seismic. Hello, I'm Dr. Chris.
And I'm Alan Chatney.
And this is the Source Points podcast where we talk about geoscience, oil and gas, politics, movies, and generally anything that may pop up in our, well, hopefully about 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 minute conversation here at Explor, in the Explor studios.
Yeah, excellent. And this is podcast number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, this week has gone whipping by as we've gone through
First week
of 2018. It's amazing. It's amazing that we're here already, and you know, I'm optimistic about this coming year. I don't know how you feel, Chris, but I am.
Well, it seems in the news recently it says that oil prices have leveled off, or at least it's at least a few months now, anyways. And some of the stuff coming out of I think it was northern Alberta was talking about help signs.
Yeah,
again,
help wanted.
People hiring. So that's well, at least good news for northern Alberta. Maybe it'll translate here in Calgary.
Yeah, I think some portions of the industry are starting to see signs of life again. And anytime you start to see oil climbing back above that $60 a barrel mark, with and the metric being West Texas Intermediate, which I've always felt is a bit of a flawed metric, that you know, people really ought to be looking at Western Canadian Select, because that's what Canadian oil and gas companies sell their oil under, is that particular index. So I've always felt like that's, you know, when Canadian oil and gas news, when the news shows oil prices as benchmarked West Texas Intermediate, it's a bit of a phony baloney thing, because we're not actually directly accessing world markets in Canada. We sell our oil at a pretty substantial discount. I did the math here. In a single day last week, I figure Canada lost about $125 million.
$125 million in one day.
One day.
Is that a daily average, or are you just sort of...
So what I did is I just said, okay, let's take the differential between West Texas Intermediate and Western Canadian Select pricing, right? And then let's multiply that by a round number of about 4 million barrels a day, which is, Canada produces 3.8. So I just used a round number of 4 million
and that's
barrels.
Not just Alberta you're including.
That's Alberta, BC, you know, Saskatchewan, 4 million barrels a day. And we're selling that at a massive discount relative to what we'd be selling it for if we were in Texas, and on the Gulf Coast somewhere. So it's indicative of you know, our problem building pipelines, our problem getting stuff done, basically, in this country.
Well, we do have supposedly one coming eventually. One pipeline, no? Yeah,
you're talking about Kinder Morgan, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah, Kinder Morgan is just a twinning of an existing line. It's not even really a new pipeline as such. It's an increase in capacity of an existing line is the way to think about Kinder Morgan. Right. You know, the mayor of Burnaby was sort of making trouble for the pipeline as though that's his place. You know, my thought is quite simply, you know, our industry ought to give thought to perhaps not selling the city of Burnaby oil and gas. Would be,
if they don't want it, then they don't need to buy it.
Okay, you don't want to facilitate shipping it. You don't need it. That was my thought, but that's a little bit harsh, maybe. So. The other thing that happened on the 1st of January is we're now paying 50% more for the molecule that's the basis of life on Earth.
Carbon tax here in Alberta.
Yeah, here we are.
An increase.
Completely bonkers. You know.
I have a different take on that, by the way. But,
do you? What's yours? I'm interested in your thoughts.
You go first, since that seems to be the popular feeling here in Alberta. I've got a slightly different counterintuitive thought about it.
Okay, but, I'm interested in that. My thought is basically that, you know, taxing carbon dioxide, which is what plants breathe, makes zero sense. And the fact is, it's really, you know, the arguments that people make is, oh, don't worry, it's not that bad, and you know, just eat less, or, you know, take a bike or whatever else. Right. Really what's happening is wealth is being redistributed. They're basically saying if you're using more, you're paying more taxes. If your income is lower, then you're going to get a rebate.
Well, it's
not really
it's hitting the middle class, as most taxes do anyways. So
yeah,
it's kind of bizarre, but
it's a tough one. What's your take?
My take, I take I call it a counterintuitive thought about it, and I think I've spoke with you about this briefly, and I think it's, if you got to envision this as an overall PR campaign that while this is affecting only Alberta, it's saying generally to the wider world and maybe even our own industry that we are taking steps. Now, maybe it's a minor step, but we're taking a step to say, hey, look, we're the good guys.
Do you think the Chinese care?
And that's, I knew that was going to come. It's not even Chinese. Everybody else,
just
do
for
they,
example,
do they care?
Do they care?
If they see it as a PR, yes.
I don't think they care. I think if the Chinese, if the Europeans, if anybody wants energy, they're going to buy it. I mean, case in point,
Not want it, need it is really
both. I mean, do we need to get on a plane and take our vacations in Mexico? Not really, but we want to do that,
right?
And so we do it. And you know, I don't think, I think this thing of trying to be the do-gooders, that's good stuff. Okay, I guess it's a Canadian thing to do. I'm not sure that the rest of the world really cares that much. I'm not sure that our self-flagellation really is going to pay the dividends that we think it's going to pay. After all, in the East, in Eastern Canada, they're happy to buy oil from dictators. Our own countrymen, our own, you know, the province of Quebec, the provinces of Ontario, the eastern provinces are happy to buy oil from a dictatorship in Venezuela. They're happy to buy oil from
not in my backyard sort of
the
thing.
Iranians, but they don't want our oil.
Right.
I mean, tell me how this is helping us. It's not helping us.
Well, what my sort of, I haven't quite brought the formula in my mind is, if we look at it as, again, a PR campaign, it's like, hey, we're the good guys, and we've always been the good guys. Here we're being even better guys. Come to us, and you don't have to complain anymore. We're helping the system. Whether or not that's actually going to translate into action on, say, the Eastern Canada's side, unknown. But I mean, I'm also saying, if you look at what I'm saying, could be very cynical, saying a PR campaign. It's like whatever, we don't really care, but hey, we're the good guys doing this.
Yeah, I don't think that markets necessarily work that way. I don't think global commodities markets work exactly in that way. I think that it's right to do the right thing. I think that it's right to be ethical, and I think there's a lot of value in the fact that we're a free and open society. We're a democracy.
Yep.
People are free, and we have regulations, and we're mandated to, and we want to genuinely do things the right way. I'm just not sure the rest of the world cares that much when it comes to buying and selling oil and gas. I'm not convinced at all that that's the case.
I don't think they do.
So why would we do it for that reason?
For PR, it would be more for internal, and it's probably what it is anyways when it boils down to it.
The deal, and the deal should be, okay, tell you what, if our carbon tax is going to go up 50%, which it did for no reason, the deal is, you got to let us build Energy East and sell you the oil and displace Venezuelan oil.
Which hasn't happened.
It's crazy. In fact,
why not? And that's another thing is why hasn't it happened? Yes, we've taken on this, I would say, burden. Why haven't, I don't know, say, the eastern provinces or BC gone, this is, in my mind, they should say, thank you for going this far. We will help you going this far.
Yeah, I mean,
and isn't that what it should have been? And
you would say, like, hey, you know, one of the things that my wife and I do is we try to buy wine preferentially from BC. There's some great wineries in BC, like you know, Burrowing Owl and Hester Creek and Tinhorn Creek. There's some great, you know, Black Hills. There's lots that I can name in the southern Okanagan Valley. Beautiful wines. So let's buy Canadian wines and support our fellow countrymen. Let's, you know, I guess I wish that the rest of the country felt the same way about our oil and our natural gas. And strangely enough, they don't. 400,000 barrels a day plus coming into the eastern, to you know, up the Gulf of St. Lawrence, from dictatorships, from nasty regimes. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Again, not in their backyard, right? It's like,
yeah, but yeah.
How to change that? I don't know. And I thought initially when I heard about, again, I take a PR campaign thought on this tax and why Alberta instituted so quickly. I really thought, and maybe it still might, that people blocking, you know, our transportation methods of oil would change their minds and say, okay.
But the mayor of Burnaby didn't change his mind. The mayor of Montreal didn't change his mind.
No.
Nobody changed their minds. Nobody cares.
No.
They just say, okay, we'll continue.
Well, it certainly will be probably an election point in the next Alberta election. And I mean, as much as I would say I think it's a great, let me phrase great, a good PR campaign, I think it'll be a great PR campaign for the United Conservatives to...
it's an interesting thing because I think these things kind of crystallize for people, just jumping around a little bit. This week, one of the things we've seen is this extraordinary weather event off the eastern seaboard. There are various names like the, whatever, bomb, cyclone.
Yeah, the weather bomb.
All these things. It's another big storm. I noticed in the news this morning that the price per MMBTU in New York spiked from $2.75 per MMBTU to over $175.
Holy cow.
Per MMBTU. So we're talking about like a 50, 60-fold increase.
Right.
50 to 60 times increase in the price of natural gas. And the reason is people need it to stay warm. Like when you need to be warm, you actually need to be warm. And your solar panels aren't working very well on the eastern seaboard today. They probably blew away or they're underwater. Natural gas in high demand, and look at what happens to the price. So this notion that we can somehow not pay attention to that is, I think it's highly problematic.
Well, there's a couple ways it could go, is get people to realize how good natural gas is and how good that sort of that is for energy, or it could also force people to want to do something else, like, I don't know, rainbow dust or
Well, and I think the point I'm trying to make, connecting to your last point, is when push comes to shove and when you've got the bomb, cyclone, weather bomb thing, you just want gas and natural gas, and you don't say, well,
you want reliability.
Do you really say, well, I would take that natural gas to heat my house or my condo here in New York if they only had a carbon tax on themselves. Like, if only, so they don't have a carbon tax in Texas, so I don't really want their natural gas. No, that's not what happens.
Right.
What happens is, I need natural gas, I need to stay warm, I want to cook food.
They don't even think about it. There's no...
it's the lifeblood of the modern
You don't
economy.
see a protest come out at minus 30.
Yeah, exactly. That's another good point, by the way. Yeah. So, and then just, just covering off on pipelines, the other thing that happened this week, like, there's been a flurry of news on this whole front.
Mm-hmm.
The Mackenzie Gas Project died. It officially died.
Permanently dead, or
permanently dead. I think I might have touched on that last time, but they've since announced they disbanded the group. It's over, and so this is Canada. But anyway, so
well, that's disappointing on the industry side. And just checking the time here, we're still doing good. Maybe we can talk about, what else could we talk about that happened in the news? Well, how about we jump right into movies then?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few movies have been in the news over the last week. Of course, Oscars are starting to come into focus, as I mentioned last time.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a phenomenal couple of movies that we saw here over the last week or so, just in our efforts to try and get all the Oscar movies out of the way. One of the ones that really kind of jumped out of the woodwork for me, which it was a movie that came out earlier this summer, is this movie called Get Out.
Get Out. That was was it that supposed horror about the?
It's a horror movie.
It is actually horror.
It's actually, but it's an Oscar contender. The screenplay is pretty remarkable. So I sort of looked at it and I said to my 15-year-old son, hey, why don't we watch this thing? It's going to be some kind of a psychological thriller horror thing. Indeed, it was horrifying, but what a great film! And
really?
Yeah, and the acting is great.
Okay.
The plot twists are lots of fun. It gets you. You sort of watch it tensed up, and your heart is going, and then in the end, you start, as the whole thing starts to reveal itself. The dime drops and things fall into place, and you go, wow, that was a really remarkable bit of storytelling. I think it's got a shot at best original screenplay.
And this was an actual horror film.
Yeah, and it's on. It's not in theaters anymore, as far as I know. We watched it on iTunes. You can rent the high def version on iTunes. It was a great movie.
I'm just checking to see what other horror films have gone to the Academy Awards, and there's actually quite a list.
Yeah, one of the most famous ones, of course, is The Shining. Back in the day,
is it in here?
I'm sure it's in there.
16 horror movies that won Oscars. I guess I was looking at the list that said what were nominated for.
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs is a horror?
Oh man, that's horror. Yeah. Silence of the Lambs.
That was like a thriller.
That was big. Who was the Oscar host that year? I think it was Billy Crystal came out as he hosted the Oscars dressed like Hannibal Lecter. Do you remember that? He came out. They wheeled him out in a dolly with his mask on. Yeah, no, it's and Get Out. I think it's got a shot at doing pretty well. The other one that I finally got a chance to see was Three Billboards in Ebbing, Missouri.
Okay.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that there's going to be some Oscars taken down on that one. At least nominated, probably one.
That's in the theaters right now?
That's in the theaters,
okay.
and it's not in every theater. Some of these things don't have broad appeal, so they don't go widely released. Right. And then
art house.
Yeah, kind of in between, right? Kind of secondary theaters. And actually, down here in Calgary, downtown Calgary, it's in the Eau Claire theaters that you'll often find these Oscar-nominated films and just kind of the really blockbustery Marvel comics.
They go to the theaters with the nice reclining
Pixar,
chairs.
Exactly, Star Wars, all that stuff is down in Chinook or at the other theaters. But it's been fun. I'm stepping into this now and having some fun with it.
Yeah, I went out and saw. It's probably a contender. It probably won't get best film, but it probably get best animated film. I saw Coco.
Oh yeah. Actually, I've heard good things about.
Well,
Coco.
Of course, because I've got kids of that age, right. So I'm not exactly going to take them to not Get Out. That's for sure. So yeah, Coco. Is that
a Pixar?
That
film?
Is a Pixar film.
Oh, okay, nice.
It was actually quite good. Their animation is getting. I don't want to say disturbingly realistic, but it's not. It's not in the what's it called, the uncanny valley yet. But it was a good story. It was their first, I believe, their first supernatural where they delved into. I wonder, can we give too many spoilers?
No spoilers.
So good animation, great story.
What about music?
Tearjerker.
Music?
The music, yeah, it was all original. Unlike when I first saw it, there was another one that it's based in Mexico, and of course there was actually another animated film that slips my mind right now. It had music in it as well, so I was like, what are they doing? Mexico music. But in this case, it was typical Pixar, good story, tearjerker at the end, and quite worth the watch. My kids loved it, and my wife loved it. And
that's great. Well, I'm sure you're right. It'll almost certainly get nominated for best animated feature.
I mean, not that they go up against anything else. Well, I guess there's other Disney
I've seen
ones.
These trailers for this movie about dogs in Japan. I forget the name of it, but
dogs.
Yeah, it's an animated feature about dogs in Japan in a kind of a postmodern situation. I'll probably take that one in. That looks good. And then the music is always good in these Pixar films. I mean, they've won a lot of Academy Awards for the music.
Absolutely.
They got nominations and awards. So yeah, that's neat. And the Golden Globes are this weekend.
All right. Yeah.
So they'll start to tell a story on the awards situation, right? And I don't know that I'll watch them, but I'll probably read about.
Yeah, there's certain things that just don't turn me on. And not to say that awards the Golden Globes aren't that important, but I've got.
You got young kids.
Yeah, young kids.
If there's guy,
is there cartoons in them?
Yeah.
Is there?
The kids are not going to make it through the Golden Globes.
Is there any puppets or anything?
Well, it'll be interesting. The award shows. My prediction with the award shows, all of them this year, will of course focus on the whole Me Too, this whole Harvey Weinstein,
that was
this whole miserable affair of this whole sordid thing of all these folks abusing positions of power in awful ways. That'll definitely be a topic.
Well, I did see it was a headline that said people are going to be wearing black.
Oh.
To
Is that a thing?
That was I didn't read anymore because I find sometimes it's been saturated and not to say it's not important, but there's a point where maybe it's a moral panic, maybe it's real, but at this point,
it's important. I mean, basically what I would say is if you're in a position of power, a position of authority, you just have a responsibility to do the right thing. I mean,
not be a jerk.
Not be a jerk. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just that awareness maybe is missing for especially if people haven't been in that position very long. So.
All right. Well, it looks like we're at about 21 minutes. So let's want to wrap this up now.
Yeah, I think so. I'm really excited about our next podcast. I just want to mention that as we transition out. I think we're going to have a guest, and we'll introduce him. So that'll be our first guest on podcast 3. Yeah,
and hopefully a lot more after this as well.
Yeah, and so it's exciting. We set this table up even better, our studio even better over the break. Had a chance to get everything wired.
You guys
for sound.
Drilled holes in the table.
Everything is tidied up.
It looks like a real studio, other than we're not in a real studio.
Well, yeah, soon we will be, right? So. No, it's good, looking forward to the next session.
All right, cue outro music.
I'm doing it.
And here goes.
I'm just fading back in.
There we go. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Chris,
and I'm Alan Chatney.
And see you next time.
See you next time.